In the mid-1800s, the United States was caught in a struggle that would determine what kind of nation it would be. The Civil War resolved two fundamental questions left unresolved by the Revolutionary War: whether the United States was to be a dissolvable confederation of sovereign states or an indivisible nation with a sovereign national government, and whether this nation, born of a declaration that all men were created with an equal right to liberty, would continue to exist as the largest slaveholding country in the world. Robert Edward Lee was born in 1807 in Stratford, Virginia, in the midst of a young and growing America. His father was Light Horse Harry Lee, a Revolutionary War hero who was perhaps part of the reason why Robert attended West Point in 1825. He graduated second in his class in 1829 without a single demerit. Already he was showing the type of dedication that would define his career as a general. After graduation, he was given his first post guarding a fort in Savannah, Georgia, along the coastline. It wouldn't be until the Civil War when Lee would first be noticed as a significant military general.
A representative of Lincoln comes to Robert E. Lee and offers him command of all the Union forces in 1861. And Robert E. Lee turns it down.
I was hoping and praying that Virginia would not secede from the Union. I really was. But once it did, I had no other choice but to resign my commission and side with Virginia. That is what duty and honor is all about.
His fame started probably the minute he was appointed as commander of the Army of Virginia. He wasn't real well known to the Army. He was appointed commander in 1862. Matter of fact, they had different types of derogatory terms when they called him Granny Lee or Old Man Lee. They just didn't really think much about him until after the Peninsula Campaign had ended, the 7 Days battles. There was something particular about Lee that the men in the ranks and the junior officers could really appreciate.
One of Lee's subordinates was asked what he thought of the new commander, and he responded, "He is audacity personified, and he will take more chances." And that is exactly what Lee did. After the 7 Days battles, Lee's men understood that he knew how to win the war on Union soil.
He had that intangible about him. He had that moxie. You know, he could walk in this room right here and he would command respect.
He was a natural born leader. He didn't have to put on airs. He didn't have to go out and wave his hat and cheer and throw his sword in the air and dance on his horse. He basically talked to them like men. And I think that's the big distinction between Lee and a lot of others who wanted to give very inspiring speeches and a lot of hot air when there are times that, yeah, you wanted to hear that, other times you didn't. Lee basically told them, this is what needs to be done, boys, this is what needs to be done, young men, and we're going to do that today.
Men understood that they are by far the most important thing that I loved. They also understood that how difficult it was for me to make decisions to send them into harm's way.
The Battle of Gettysburg is often viewed as General Lee's greatest folly, but during this time of turmoil and stress, Lee remained the heart and soul of the Southern troops.
Some people under the misconception that the battle was decided on the 3rd of July. It was not. It was decided on the 1st of July when we did not capture Culp's Hill and Cemetery Hill. Because those were the two most prominent points, the high ground in the Gettysburg area. And he who controls the high ground places his artillery pieces on the high ground and rains artillery fire down on the enemy. But because we did not capture Culp's Hill and Cemetery Hill, the Union rained artillery fire down on my men on July 3rd when they traversed that piece of ground now known as Pickett's Charge.
That's exactly, you look at Pickett's Charge, which is one of his more controversial attacks, obviously not a good idea. But one of the Confederate officers said they were looking across the field and they said, man, this is a desperate thing to attempt. But if Lee ordered it, then it must be all right. It's that faith in what they call the old man, as they referred to him.
He rides down to see what's happened. By the time he gets there, he sees the refugees of Pickett's Charge coming back across the field. Instead of blaming others for the attack going wrong, here he rides amongst the officers and the enlisted men, the lowest of the low, who have had a bad day. And he tells them, be strong, pick up a musket, rally the other troops back behind. We need all good men now. We need all good, true men. That says something about why these men would be so, would admire Lee so much. Here's the commanding general of the army telling you, a private, you did all you could do that day, and taking the blame basically on his shoulders and not yours for the failure of it. No wonder they loved the man. No wonder they loved the man. Continue until Jefferson Davis, President of the Confederate States, tells him to quit. But he realizes April 9th, 1865, when his army is trapped at Appomattox Courthouse, there's nowhere to go. He has no choice but to go see Grant and offer the surrender terms, discuss surrender terms for the Army of Virginia there. That says something about Lee's greatness. He didn't want to just fight it out to the last man, shed blood for no reason at all. He realized that the war was over. War was ended. And even though his command ended there, his life as a very respected officer did not, because he was respected not only in the Confederacy, but also in the North. Northern generals who fought against him were defeated by him, and nothing but the highest respect for Lee, because of his bearing, because of his personality, and because of his, I think, willfulness to, the war is over, we've got to put that behind us and move ahead. We've got to think about the future, we've got to think about tomorrow, not think about the past.
After Lee's surrender at Appomattox and the close of the Civil War, Lee became the president of a struggling Washington college named after George Washington. He felt it was his duty to educate his fellow war-torn Americans. During his tenure, Lee promoted the sciences and established what would later become the School of Journalism. He was buried underneath Lee Chapel on campus. Shortly after his death, the school became known as Washington and Lee.
The war is over, and Southerners are trying to find some sort of good out of this whole thing. What good came out of this defeat? The South is devastated. We've lost nearly 500,000 men. All of our young men are gone. Financially, banks are in ruin. There's no money. There's nothing to, but basically hard scrabble to come back. There has to be some good symbol out of this war. Well, it's not Jefferson Davis. It's not Braxton Bragg or Joseph Johnson or John Bell Hood. It's Robert E. Lee that people start to look to. Because if anything, he is the symbol of what is good and honorable about the South, what is good and honorable about fighting for the cause, and what is good and honorable about being loyal to your state.
In 1870, when he knew he was dying, he acquiesced to take a train ride from Richmond, Virginia, down to Florida and back up. And when the people who fought for the Confederacy heard about it, they lined the railroad tracks, every inch, all the way down and all the way back. Not one word was ever said. They just took their hats off and bowed.
And he became almost this godlike figure after his death in 1870. He was interred in chapel there at Washington, was now Washington Lee College, Washington University, and yearly thousands of people would go to visit his grave, visit his crypt at the back of the chapel there. There was this aura about Lee and his legacy, and as veterans wrote about him, it was always in the way that he was a father figure rather than just a general.
Robert E. Lee was a leader of extraordinary talents who inspired an outgunned, outmanned army to legendary heights. By his achievements, Lee won a high place amongst the great generals of history. His personal influence over the men whom he led was extraordinary. Friends and foes alike acknowledged the purity of his motives, the virtues of his private life, his earnest Christianity, and the loyalty with which he accepted the ruin of his party. Today, he remains internationally respected as a daring, often brilliant tactician, a father figure, and a man who opposed secession but felt honor-bound to serve his native state. Robert E. Lee lived a life that is a model for anyone who seeks to shoulder the profound responsibility of leading others. This model left a legacy that is unmatched by the modern man.